Once you have an innovation culture, even those who are not scientists or engineers, poets, actors, journalists, they as community embrace the meaning of what it is to be scientifically literate. They embrace the concept of an innovation culture. They vote in ways that promote it. Today we will talk about innovation. So let's begin. Good morning, IIBM. My name is Balakrishnan and I'm your host for today's session. I welcome you all to IIBM Original Direct to Home Lecture Series, Hands On, Plugs On, Minds On. Before I introduce you to today's speaker, let me take you through the itinerary of today's session. The session is going to be of 45 minutes of knowledge sharing, followed by 15 minutes of question and answers. So we are looking forward to your interesting, igniting, and awakening questions. It fills me with honor and joy to introduce you to today's speaker and our very own alumni from the class of 2004 and 6, Mr. Mandar Thosar, a friend, philosopher, solution provider, and a guide from IIBM alumni family. Mandar sir is the founder and growth consultant at 1.01, a consulting firm specialized in providing growth strategies, inbound strategies, and digital marketing for digital small and medium businesses. Prior to this, sir was working with EZ Solution Limited as AVP marketing for 8+ years. Academically, sir is an MBA in e-business from our very own alma mater, IIBM. Prior to this, sir did his mechanical engineering from Amravati University. Storytelling and design thinking are Mandar sir's favorite topic for conversations. Sir is full of sense of humor and so candid in his communication that he can crack joke on anything and everything. Best thing about sir is that he's a good listener and a go-to person for most of us. Sometimes he also plays a role of life and action coach for us. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome one of the finest logical brain from IIBM alumni family, Mr. Mandar Thosar.
Thank you, Bali. I really do not know whether this was my profile or somebody else because nobody has introduced me like this ever. I hope I'll be able to do justice today to some degree to this profile. With that thing in mind, I would like to start today's presentation. Give me a moment. I'm sharing my screen.
Sure, sir.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And first of all, apology for not having this session in a very interactive way. Otherwise, innovation is such a topic wherein if we are able to interact, then you understand more. But nobody can help with the pandemic situation that we are in. I'll try to do whatever I can to make it interactive from one side so that at least you people are thinking what I'm asking in your head. If we could achieve that in today's session, I think my job would be done. And that would be my success measure. Having said that, let's jump into today's topic. So I'm going to talk on type of innovations. Okay, and innovation is such a heavy word which I picked up in the industry in last 10-20 years that every now and then this word you will see that everybody is using, from the CEO of the organization to the lowest junior possible white collar worker in the organization. And the problem is that so many people are using it has made this word lost its meaning, right? So in today's session, we will try to dissect logically the different types of innovations that are there. So let's first look at this nice graphics. What emotions it creates in your head. It's a rainy day. I think it drizzled a bit here in the morning and everybody wants to have a cup of tea. This is 2020. Exactly 100 years back, this was not the situation for tea. Tea was not a commodity drink in India. People were preferring coffee for most part of India, primarily south, but tea was almost non-existent as we see it today. It was consumed in a limited quantity in limited zone of India. What made it change is the Britishers came here and they were fond of tea because the Dutch first got introduced to tea through China and they promoted it in Europe, which eventually got spread into UK. Then the Prince of UK married some girl who was very fond of tea, and tea became a social status thing, and people used to have party about tea, and it became so popular that in a sport like cricket, the break time is called as tea time, right? And in last 100 years, once it got introduced to India, we have innovated the original form of tea. The original form of tea was never of this color. It was always black or green or any other dark color, but it didn't have the content as milk. But because the Bengal and Gujarat, which were like the key areas for the Britishers, that is the area which got introduced to tea first. But also this area had good volume of milk, and these people were liking milk, so they started introducing milk to this black tea, and that's how the Indian tea got its birth, right? So this is the amazing example of innovation that we see across on a daily basis. You go to any gali kucha or the top 5-star hotel of India, you will see that tea is everywhere, right? So that's the phenomenal success of tea. But to go and understand what that innovation thing is, let us first understand the concept of invention. When I say invention, it can be for product or process, right? So these are the typical things where you can get your patents. Second is, when you invent something, the value of your invention is not proven. For example, when Madame Curie got to know about the property of X-ray, she invented sort of X-ray, or discovered rather, because it was already there. But the value of X-ray was unproven. Nobody knew how to use that thing, right? So this is the property of invention. The value is unproven. And the third value is experimentation. So this is experimentative in nature. So you have not mastered, you cannot produce it maybe at a commercial scale. And when I say commercial scale, I'm not talking about the volume, but in a standardized form. So you have to stable the process to mature it. So sometimes you mix two ingredients to form something else, but if you are changing the quantities every now and then, you will see the resultant product is not the same. So in laboratories, people stabilize the product. So they exactly figure out what proportion of A, under what condition, what temperature, when I mix with B, I'll get a product C. So that experimentation is a very intrinsic nature of invention. Then look at what is commercial aspect of it, commercialization aspect of the thing. It is applicability. So whenever the thing that we want to sell or we want to create offering out of it, it has to have the sense of applicability. Just to give an example, a quarterback, nobody was asking for face mask. Now everybody is asking for face mask because the applicability of the face mask have gone up because of the corona pandemic, right? So that's applicability. Second is positive value. Whenever you are paying something and you are getting that particular product in return, in your head you should feel that you are getting more than what you are paying, and that's the positive value concept. If I'm paying 100 rupees to get something, so in return, if I'm not getting more than 100 in my head, then I will feel the deal is not successful and probably I'll not buy more of that product. So you have to have a positive value element into the product if you want to commercialize it. And third is ability to scale. My favorite example is one of my friend, let's say, can cook paneer butter masala, and she's the best cook when it comes to this dish, and that's my favorite dish. But can she scale the production of paneer butter masala? Probably not. So she cannot make a business out of it. So this ability of scale is also an important element of the commercialization thing. And now let us see what innovation is, because now we have understood what invention is and what commercialization is. and we will see what's the relation of invention and commercialization to innovation. But before that, let's see a movie.
You've had your highs and your lows, and you've been absolutely magnificent right through. How does one get up off the deck when things aren't going well?
I would like to share one experience with you here. It's a funny story, but completely out of the box, which we hadn't tried, and it did wonders for our team. We were playing against New Zealand, and Chris Keynes was bowling. This was in India, in Mohali, so in your hometown. The ball was reverse swinging, and Chris Keynes was virtually beating us 2-3 times an over. I was batting with Rahul Dravid, so the main batters were batting. We'd like to believe that we were the main batters. And we were getting beaten, and we were sort of clueless because we couldn't see the shine. Sometimes the surfaces are such that it becomes a little difficult to figure out which side is the shiny side and which is the rough side. I expect all you guys to know what reverse swing is. Reverse swing is wherever the shiny side is, the ball starts to go in that direction. Even if the bowler wants the ball to go in the opposite direction, it will not go because of the imbalance and the surface of the ball. So Chris had started doing that, and I met with Rahul in the middle of the wicket, in the middle of the over. I said, I've got an idea. And he said, do you want to share it now or after the over? I said, I'll share with you after the over, but it can work. So Rahul said, okay, tell me now, what is your idea? I said to Rahul, I am closer to the bowler, and when he's walking back on the run-up, I need to stand here. When he's walking back onto his run-up, I would be watching him closely, and I'd be watching the ball. Which side is the shiny side and which side is the rough side? So Rahul said, then what happens after that? I said, whichever side is the shiny side, I will hold the bat in that hand. If he's going to bowl an outswinger, the bat is going to be in my left hand. If he's bowling in swinger, the bat is in my right hand at the non-striker's end. So that's the only time in my career when the batsman is ready to face the ball. He's not watching the bowler, he's watching the bat in my hand. So he's
very good.
So Rahul is watching me, and suddenly you see a couple of cover drives being hit for boundaries, and on drives passing piercing mid-wicket and mid-on, and Chris is like wondering, these guys were getting beaten a couple of times every over, and suddenly I'm giving away a couple of boundaries. There's definitely something wrong. So all the fielders were watching me because I was, watching Chris and not Rahul. And normally no batsman stands facing the bowler. He would be like facing the other batter. And then I would quickly change the bat, and by then they had sort of figured out that there is something fishy. And Chris lost his momentum, he lost his rhythm, and he held the ball cross seam, and he bowled the ball, and instead of looking at Rahul or checking what has happened there, he looks at me and I said, what have you got for this? Chris didn't realize that I had also warned Rahul that if I don't know what is coming, I'm going to hold the bat in the middle. So that is how the story goes. So it's just, in short, it's just being a step ahead of your opposition.
Let me share my PowerPoint screen again. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Great. So now the video that we have seen, just keep that thing in mind for a while, and as we move to next slide, we'll discuss that video. So innovation is equal to invention star commercialization. That later star means multiply in IT world. So innovation is the multiplication of invention and commercialization, which means both these elements are important. Without that, you cannot innovate. So what we have seen is invention is product or process. It is about product or process. It has unproven value and it is experimentative in nature. Whereas commercialization is about applicability, positive value, and it has a sense of ability to scale. Right? And when we say innovation, it has to have both these abilities, which means you are innovating either your product or process, and it is applicable in the market. It is solving somebody's real problem, right? And unproven value, your innovation is all about converting that unproven value to positive value in the head of the consumer. Then experimentation. From experimentation, you have to move to scale, to be able to scale that product, that offering. That is all innovation is about. Now, if you look at the video that we have had, it was not talking about anything. But does that mean it was not an innovative thing? It was innovative thing what Sachin did on the ground. But here, in this context of our presentation, we are talking about business innovation. We are not talking about frugal innovation or the creative response to the situation by an individual. So I wanted to make that clarity in your head at the start of the presentation, because that video is being circulated in most of the business discussion as a real-time innovation example. But in business context, that may not be the value of the innovation. The value of the innovation is creating viable new offering. Right? Your innovation in the business should be able to create new offerings that are viable, which means there's some demand in the market for that product and people are ready to pay, and that money that they are ready to pay has to be more than your cost. Then only you can sustain with that product in the market. Right. So if we have to look at innovation in a logical sense, we can break that innovation into 10 small buckets, and we can kind of bucket them into 3 categories. So first category is internal. We'll discuss this each and every bucket in detail, but just for explanation purpose, there's something that we can do internally to be more innovative. And for that, we don't have to change the product. We don't have to reach out to customers. Within the premises of the organization or at the headquarter center, we can cover up certain things. Second bucket is of product. So here you have to work on the product, right? And third bucket is about the feeling. So whatever you do, it will entice certain feeling in the mind of your customer. So it is about that. So there are 4 elements for internal, which are called like configuration factors. Then 2 factors for offering, which are product related things, and then 4 factors for experience, which are necessarily creating some sort of feeling in the minds of or in the heart of the customer, right? And this is something that Doblin has gifted to the world. So this 10 types of innovation on which the presentation is based is the output of Doblin Consulting. So in around 1980, mid 1980s, everybody was talking only about design thinking. Nobody was talking about innovation. So they realized that there's a need of innovation and how to approach innovation in a more strategic and structured way. So they came up with this model. And now we are going to see each and every element. I'm trying to dumb it down to a level where you will understand what it is, but we may not understand how to do it. So innovation has 2 aspects. So what to innovate is one aspect, and how to innovate is the other aspect. Today in this session, we are going to talk only about what to innovate. Okay, so let's go to the first model. So profit model. When I say profit model, it is a way in which the organization make money, right? It is as simple as that. So whatever creativity you can bring in so that your organization brings in more money for you, that's profit model. So the first example is Google. Now tell me how many of you pay Google for the result, right? So Google is not asking you money from your wallet. You search something in Google, Google gives you the response. That is useful, right? So applicability is there. That model is scalable. You tell your friend and your friend will also be able to search the similar thing in Google, but Google is not charging you. But then the question is how Google is making money. Now Google is making money through the ads. That is the profit model of Google. And what Google has realized is if more people are coming to my platform and if they are happy with the search result that I am giving to them, then more and more people will come because they see the value in my offering. And I can tell my advertisers that, hey, look, so many people are coming to my platform, so you can make money by displaying your products. And it is natural that when you are searching a product, you will also have a look at the ad, and then somebody would click on that ad and they buy your product. And that idea was really picked up by the marketing community, and so Google became very popular. But this idea was not invented by Google. So there was a company by the name of Overture before Google, which invented this product called as like ad model, but Google perfected it. Google innovated it. So that's our first example. Second is Netflix. So what Netflix did is people were paying for rental videos. That was the model. I mean, in my childhood, I used to go to the VCR store, VCD, video cassette store. You go them, ask for the VCD, they'll write your name in the register. You get that VCD, the player and the cassette back to home. You play it for 3 hours. You go back, deliver, and you give whatever 10, 5, 15 rupees were there, right? But I, as a user, have to bring that set and the cassette to home, play it, and deliver it back. That was a trouble. Netflix sort of thought, why can we not deliver video like direct to home, and let's ask money as a subscription from users. And people liked it. Again, Netflix did not invented this model. Netflix perfected this model. So they innovated. And this is very our own Indian innovation. So there's this company, Kevin Care. They came up with the concept of sachets. Until then, a shampoo was being sold in a big bottles, so which made it unaffordable for the lower income community of India. So this fellow, Chinni, decided, why can I not make it available in small packets so that my product becomes affordable? And that idea got picked up really well, and that's how it made money. And now that sachets has become the routine thing. I mean, you won't get surprised by looking at sachets. Every MNC is having a sachet model now, which was not the case 15 years back approximately. Right? So that's profit model. Second is network. So when I say network, what I'm saying is actually, how do you reap value of your contacts, right? Be it personal or commercial level contacts. But here, because we are talking business, let's focus more on commercial contact. So there's this company Target, like we have here the Big Bazaar sort of thing. So they are the biggest retail, one of the biggest retail store in US. So what they did is they contacted with some of the unique product makers, and they said, okay, you will exclusively sell your product in our stores, so that when people want to buy that particular unique, very niche product, they will have to go to Target. And so the footfall in the Target store would go up. To extent, they went on this strategy that at one point of time, Lego was only sold, Lego, the bricks that we play at home, right, the building block bricks, were only sold at the Target store. So that's how Target created value. If you want to buy that niche product, niche offering, you will have to come to my store. Second example is GSK. Now, GSK is a pharmaceutical company, and they have to invest into R&D of many products. And R&D are experimentative in nature and needs huge amount of funds. So it's not possible for one company to invest into every possible treatment, drug invention. So what GSK did is, GSK tied up with the universities and they partner with them, and what they told them is, we will jointly invent the drugs, and that was their innovation model. So they didn't have to invest money into the R&D of pharmaceuticals. Third is Amul. So Amul has created such a phenomenal network of milk producers that every morning they get tons of milk in their factory. And these people are so loyal that they only give milk to Amul. So that's the network effect innovation. Now let's move to the structure effect of it. So what it talks about is your alignment of the talent with the assets. So here you are not changing process, you are not doing anything else. You are just realigning whatever you have to create a value out of it. So for example, Southwest Airlines, so what their strategy of structure is, they decided that we will have only one type of plane in our fleet. What the benefit that they can get out of that is, now they do not have to have huge spare part in their warehouse, because they are flying only one type of plane. So they know that the warehouse should carry the spare part of only that plane. All the training that happens to their engineers, they have to invest only in one type of plane, right? And it is very easy to change planes also. So, and because you are buying planes of the same category, you also can negotiate well with the suppliers. So that Southwest strategy. Here, they have not changed anything. They have just decided that we will have one type of plane. So that's how they brought in that standardization in the structure. That's their innovation. This whole food market, this is a company, what they decided is, they said, okay, we will decentralize our decisions. So what do they mean by decentralize of the decision? What product to be procured, at what price, where to display that into the shelf is all decided by the local people. Their logic was, because local people understand the taste and the preferences of the local community, let them decide that. So they came up with sort of a pseudo franchisee model where their own people, the people which are there on their payroll, are selling the stuff as if they are some franchisee. So that's their model of structure. And this is a globe, because every company on the planet right now have come up with a new model, work from home. IT was always been doing this sort of thing, but other industries also have responded well. So in very shortest possible time, what they did is they said, okay, the people aspect remains same, but rather than using company assets, people will use their own asset and we will still deliver the value. So that's the structural change that almost all the companies in the world have brought to respond to the coronavirus situation. So that's structure. Fourth element is process. Now this is the last element when of the internal components of the innovation, business innovation. So when I say process, what I'm talking about is a way of creating superior methods for doing your work. Let's see the example to understand it in detail. First is Zipcar. Now this is a car rental company, but if you are renting car, you have to have your people managing those cars and see how the car is being run by that particular driver who is renting it. And like you have to have somebody who will man the location just to like make car available to people. What they did is they automized everything. Now they do not have to maintain a fleet. A fleet manager will be responsible for allocating the cars. You just apply for a car on mobile, you get access through the mobile, you pick up the car from your location, you drive it, you put it back and pay for it. And while you are driving, the continuous monitoring is there, like you see in Uber and all. So that is their process improvement. By that, what they have done is they have reduced the manual cost and overheads that are there in the process. No other company was doing that when they innovated that aspect. So that's Zipcar for you. Second is Toyota. So I don't know how many of you have heard of lean production, just-in-time production. So these are the concept brought in by Toyota. So if you are creating excess or if you are creating low, in both the situation, organization is facing problem. So what Toyota said is, we will keep our inventories minimal. So we will procure only when it is needed. And that's lean manufacturing for you. That in itself could be a big topic. So right now we'll stop there on that. Then IKEA. IKEA just entered India. Otherwise, this is very popular furniture brand in the world. What they do is they came up with the concept of flat pack furniture, which means they are not giving you assembled furniture. You get furniture in the box, which you are supposed to assemble at your home. So what interesting thing that they have done is with this kind of thing, that they have they have done away with the need of your assembly stations. Otherwise, if you are bringing furnitures and you want to deliver them into completely assembled mode, then you have to have those factory. Your storage space increases, so they are saving on storage space and the effort that goes into making the furniture into a complete furniture as we see. So they are sort of selling you raw material. They are giving you an instruction manual which is more of picture based. This also helps them in creating different manuals for different regions in a shortest possible time, because you don't have to translate whole lot of text, because if you're translating text from one language to another without much of context, you make mistakes there. So their manuals are all graphics based. So you will know, okay, I have to join this part onto this side of the other part, and it's very easily given. And not only that, what they have done is they said that we'll be using only one Allen key. So with just one Allen key is sort of screwdriver for laymen. So with that one screwdriver, you can assemble all the furnitures of IKEA till that they have produced. So that's IKEA, and this is how you innovate in the processor aspect of it. Let's look at product performance. Now this is the first bucket, first element of the product bucket. What it means is distinguishing features and the functionality of the product. And when we read that, like, we have to have features and functionality, what comes to our mind is like it has to be better in terms of quality, it has to be better in terms of functionality, but it can also be easy to use, because world is now thinking of easy to use also as a functionality, which was not the case almost 10 years back. So first example there is Intuit. So they are into financials. So what they do is they have created a product wherein you don't have to manage your accounts. Intuit will manage it. It's a SaaS based product, right? Then Corning. How many of you have heard of this company? I do not know. But if you are using mobile phone, there's a good chance that you are using Corning glass, which is also called as Gorilla Glass, right? So this company was earlier into ceramics, but they realized that people are going to use mobiles more and more, and they pivoted themselves and created phenomenal product category by the name Gorilla Glasses. And their glasses are really amazing, and that's their product performance. And lastly, our own ISRO, right? What is ISRO's distinguishing factor is cheapest. So they offer high quality thing at a very cheap cost. That you must have heard those WhatsApp forwards that ISRO sent something to Mars at a cheaper cost than your auto rickshaw, right? That's their product performance for you. Then the second element in product is product system. So when I say system, it's a complementary product or services around your offering. Right? So let's see the first example in that. When we are using Android or Apple ecosystem of mobile, why we are buying that probably is because most of the apps are available. So whatever you want to do on your mobile, you can, because you are very certain that an app would be there. If you want to communicate with your friend, the app is there. If you want to talk to your friend, the app is there. If you want to see your friend, the app is there. If you want to color something, the app is there, right? So this product OS are successful because they have good amount of complementary apps that runs on them. Next example is Scion. Now this is a child brand of Toyota. They wanted to create something for the young audience, and young audience cannot afford much money. So they said, okay, let's come up with a cost-effective version of Toyota cars. But if they just do it in a cost-effective way, they would end up coming up with something like Nano, and people may not like it. So what they did is they created a third-party accessories system around Scion. So you can buy that car and you can accessorize your car using third-party players. So that's how every car you can make it very unique. That's their offering. So they have innovated their product system. Then comes Mozilla. Mozilla is the company behind Firefox. So the browser Firefox that we use is by the company Mozilla. What they have done, which was like way ahead of the time, is they said, okay, we will build browser for you and we will build SDK, software development kit for you. And they opened that SDK to developers. And developers using that SDK can create plugins. I'm sure most of us are using at least 1 or 2 plugins in Chrome. So that concept of plugin is brought in by the Firefox. And because of that, there are like literally thousands of plugins for Firefox browsers. So that product system. Let's move on to service part. Service is the first factor in the experience zone. So now whatever you do from this point onward, you will see there's a touch point with the customer. So when I say service, what I mean is it's a support and enhancement thing that surrounds your offering. So one is your offering, and what you do around your offering to make it relevant is your service element. So the first example, let's say Zappos. Zappos is now taken over by Amazon. But in the 10 core values that Zappos had decided for themselves, one of the values was wow delivery. And what they mean by wow delivery is if their representative feels that they have to send a bouquet to their customer, their representative can do that without asking their managers. And the concept was, if I am dealing with my customer, I know my customer well. And if I have to spend something to make my customer feel good, I am free to do that. I don't have to have approval from anybody. And that was the success factor for Zappos. Zappos was into shoes. Then next example is Men's Warehouse. So this is an apparel company from US again, which is dealing into suits, tuxedo, coats. Their service unique aspect is if you buy anything from them, the pricing, so the ironing cost is borne by this company forever. Till the time you have their product, they'll pay for your ironing. Amazing, right? And third company here in this case, Maruti Suzuki, because Suzuki has more stake in it now. The logo talks about only Suzuki, otherwise this is Maruti Suzuki. Most of the people you will see in India going for Maruti Suzuki for one simple reason: they have service center across the country and their spare part availability is amazing, right? So when you are buying a car, the allied services that you get around it also is an important factor, and that's service thing. So you can innovate even on service level for your offering and all. 8 is a channel, and when I say channel is how your offerings are delivered to customers. So what channel your company is taking to reach out to the customer. First is Tesla. Tesla is electric car, as we know. Elon Musk is a very famous character now. Right? What they have done unique is they have done away with their distributors completely. So now Tesla deals directly with you as an end customer. There's no supply chain intermediary in between. They have got their own showrooms. So you can, when you walk into the showroom, you can be certain that you are walking to the Tesla showroom and not some franchise showroom. And what has benefited them is the margin that they were sharing with these middlemen is saved. So that's Tesla's channel strategy. MTN. This is African cellular company, and I mean it's no-brainer. If you want to have a cellular company, you have to have electricity because you want to set up tower. And the situation in Africa was such that there was no availability of electricity everywhere, and so they couldn't set up tower. So what they did is they created local power plants and electricity grid across Africa. And through that they set up their tower, and now with this network they are also offering the radio services and TV services and cable services. This is very unique. To sell one product, they have created the the whole network as a foundation, which is now being used by other players, and they are getting royalty for that. So that's their channel strategy. This is a company from Pune, QuickRide. So what they do is, they said, okay, we want to offer carpooling to our people, but we do not want to invest in car because it's a carpooling model, a shared ride model. So they said, okay, let's create a marketplace. We will kind of on that marketplace try to see who wants to take people and take it to them to point B. And then we will also look for people who want to go from point A to point B, and they are just looking for somebody who can take them in their car. So they matched these two sides and they created a marketplace. So that's their channel strategy. The next element is brand. So brand is the representation of your offerings and business. So it is not either the offering or the service. It is the emotion that people have in their head when they hear of your brand. So for example, Intel. So whenever we see Intel, we feel, okay, we are talking about like high quality computing, crunching ability. So before Intel came up with this Intel Inside campaign, everybody was targeting the manufacturers of the laptops or the PCs. Laptops were less during that time, more of PCs. But Intel started reaching out to end customers directly, and it created kind of an image wherein if your computer has Intel Inside, that means it is of the best quality. So that's their brand strategy. Next is Virgin. It's a brand. So their philosophy they created is, you give us tired industry as in Thakeli industry. So you give us Thakeli industry and we will bring in fund to that industry. And they are very popular with that. And lastly, our Tata. So whenever you hear this Tata brand, you know it's trustworthy, they will not cheat you. That's the image Tata brand has created for themselves in India. Now the last element, it's customer engagement. So how are you engaging with your customers? The strategy around that and how you innovate that will define your success in the market. So you have to have distinctive interaction with the customer, and how you foster that makes a difference. Blizzard Entertainment. Now, how many of you have heard of this World of Warcraft? I don't know, but they came up with this strategy. If people are playing online, why cannot they play with each other? So they created this online platform where people play with each other online. Now almost every game that you see will have this multiplayer facility. So they have kind of created that sort of innovation for the very first time. They are not the inventor of it, but their product became very viral because of that element, that you can play simultaneously with so many people together. The second is Apple. Here I'm talking about the developer aspect of Apple ecosystem. So whenever they conducted this worldwide developer conference, which is commonly known as WWDC, so they give their developers a very VIP treatment in that in that event. So they will release their product first to their developers only. They will seek the response from this developer on the hardware and the software part before even they release it to the normal people, as in layman people. And they treat their developers so well that some of the developers have only product built for Apple ecosystem and not for any other. No Windows and no Chromebook, only Apple, because they are treating so well to their developers. Then this product, Mint. So again, this is Intuit product, but this is for the retail users, as in like individual users. So if you are managing your financials on Mint, Mint tells you where are the opportunities for you to save your money. Right? That's a service that Mint gives me just because I'm using their platform. So that's how Mint engages with the customer. Now, all the examples that we have seen so far were independently. Now let's see what happens if we mix and match multiple elements of the business innovation. So what you will see, the impact multiplies and you get surprising result. So for example, you buy Apple product, any of the Apple product, you get access to Apple Store. And in Apple Store, you have millions of apps. And you also get access to iTunes, wherein you can buy movie or a single song or whatever, right? So because of this, we say Apple has created its ecosystem. But if you dissect that, what you will see is Apple has mixed and matched multiple elements of the business innovation. So with the product, they have given you product performance. So when you buy Apple, you will see people telling you that, oh, it's amazing quality, you cannot beat Apple performance. So that's a product side of it. With Apple thing, you get access to their apps. So that product system, so they are networking with other players who are complementary to their product. So that system part of it. And their profit model is people now do not have to invest into the complete package. Right? They can buy single audio song also. So that's how you can mix and match, but you should not be doing all the innovations on all the 10 factors simultaneously. So with that, we will close. Now I'll expose myself for Q&A. Please go ahead, shoot your questions. I'll stop sharing now so that you can see. Yes.
Thank you, sir. So, first question is, how do you motivate creativity among your employees and your co-workers?
Okay. Whenever somebody comes to you with some idea, do not short that idea. At least listen to them, right? If you are asking questions, then person will feel that you are giving thought to the idea that somebody has brought to your table. So you should be doing that. That's the first step of motivation. Second, if you really think that the idea is viable, then you invest into that idea. You bring in other people and form a team and give clear targets to this individual. Let's say in 6 months you show this, or you create at least MVP, minimal viable product, as we call it. So that could be the second thing. If you think the idea has value but it needs fine tuning, you can send this guy to some training on innovation, because he has clearly, or he or she has clearly the ability to think beyond obvious. Right? So in short, yeah, you can do this many things and much more, obviously, but I could think of this only right now.
Great. So the second question is, what adaptation you have made in the current situation in your work environment?
Right now I'm operating from home. Otherwise I used to go to client offices. But what we have done is, so before this particular situation, all the meetings were most of the time without agenda. And what we did is, after we were home lockdown, we were operating in the same way, as in we were going to meeting without the agenda, and the result was not coming there. So what we decided, the big change that we have seen, we as in me and most of my customers, is now most of the meetings that we have are with agenda. So we know we are heading into this meeting, this is what we should be coming out with as an outcome of this meeting. And if there are some pre-reads for the people, we inform them beforehand, and that is making our meeting more productive. And yeah, there are small tweaks. I mean, you should be using your mute frequently. Those kind of things are there which we were not using otherwise. So that small process tweaks are there.
So there are n number of questions, but because of the time constraint and because of there's another session after this. Oh, this is the last question. What is your master advice to the forthcoming managers?
Forthcoming managers, okay. Do not have this univision attitude. I mean, if I am an HR, if I'm a marketing manager, don't only think about marketing, because world is now moving into innovation, and as you see, necessarily innovation is mixing two things. So if you are good at marketing, also try to learn something more about HR or operations or sales or at least technology, so you can mix those two things and create something new. Otherwise, if you are doing just one thing, AI is getting advanced very rapidly. You will be obsolete in next 5 to 10 years if you do not have this ability of seeing beyond and doing something which others have not done so far. So be curious, keep experimenting, learn something new from other fields. So yeah, I'd say that.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your words of wisdom. We are
Thank
looking forward for more sessions from you.
For sure. In fact, I'm looking forward to meet these students in person, because this webinar is really not my cup of tea. You enjoy more when you interact with people.
Right, sir. On behalf of IIBM family, we wish you great success in all your future endeavors. I must thank you to visit Institute for this session.
My pleasure.
For all our audience, stay tuned for the next session. We will meet again tomorrow for the another session. Till then, long live IIBM and Jai Hind.
Long live IIBM. Thank you all. Bye.